if you have more money, you have more options.
Yep.
But it gets to a point, maybe too much money, you have less options.
What is that, a penalty of potentially $500 a day or something like that?
I've had clients actually get in trouble
Yep.
and get their B1s, B2 denied.
A lot of people don't even know, but like the B1, B2, they just assume it's a tourist visa. But the first part of the B1,
But now it's being appealed, obviously, by the U.S. government.
that's unfortunate that you can't control it. But I mean, in theory, the country and sort of the government can sort of be biased against.
Welcome back to episode 57 of the James Baker CPA podcast. And today on my podcast, I have my guest, Joaquin Rosales. He's been on the channel before, immigration attorney based in Miami. Thanks for being here, Joaquin.
Of course, man. Is it really 57th?
57th episode. I haven't numbered the other ones yet, but I feel like it should be around 57.
But you told me you had like 1,200 episodes.
I have so yes, if you're new to the channel, I have like 1,200 videos on the YouTube channel.
Amazing.
But like in terms of podcast episodes, the other 56 are like riddled in there if you can find them. So
We've probably done like 10 ourselves, right?
we've done a number of them. And
Well, thank you for having me again, man.
yeah, I mean, happy to have a little conversation, go over some immigration stuff, some tax stuff, and some current event stuff. So,
Cool.
you know, I deal with a lot of clients who are international business owners, people from other countries who are opening bank accounts and opening up companies and all that. What kind of work do you do in that regard? Do you help like I know you help clients come into the US. How is it for them opening bank accounts?
Well, some of them are actually, you know, I've heard you in a few videos talk about certain countries that have difficulties opening up bank accounts. So there's certain countries that are definitely a little bit more difficult if you're, you know, say from Pakistan to open up a bank account.
But is that in person, you mean? Like, do your clients mostly come here in person, open accounts?
So the majority of the clients that we deal with, they're doing E2 visas, and typically they're doing it through franchises. So a lot of the franchises will have the structure a little bit set up in the sense that you know, it'll be easier to maybe have a bank account opened up, but it still doesn't change the fact that the majority of them have to go through the process of opening up an LLC, you know, get their EIN and also the bank account open. That's a must. I mean, you can't move
Well, they
forward
have to
without
fund to get an E2. You have to fund a business.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to have a business, a company,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and you have to have a bank account to actually send the money to.
Correct.
So, and I know I've been helping some of your clients getting through this, but so you have a guy from whatever, Israel, who wants an E2. I assume they're E2 country, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So he wants an E2. You can open an LLC up online.
Yep.
What are you guys doing for the banking solutions for them now? How are you getting that bank account open?
So there's a couple of banks that we work with. Actually, you know, through, you know, the stuff that I've learned, you know, with you, regarding sort of virtual banks, it's been a little bit more of an easier process. Some people are uneasy, obviously, if you're spending $150,000.
You tell them like Mercury and Relay Fi, and they're like, I don't know.
Sometimes they feel a little bit uneasy about it, and you know, they want sort of more of the conventional banking systems, and we found some partners that they feel comfortable working with our clients, so long as there's like a minimal amount of investment.
So it's like
money,
local, smaller banks, and if someone puts in was like $20,000 or $30,000
at a minimum, something like that,
and they establish a relationship, a little more KYC, a virtual meeting, then they can open an account.
Yeah, because of course they haven't had the visa issued to them yet, so they can't be here. Most of them, right? So
because they don't even have a visa. So
they don't even have a visa,
to.
right? In some instances, they don't even have a tourist visa. So then they can't do the in-person bank appointment. But we found some bank partnerships where essentially they can do it via Zoom, and they open it up, but there's a minimum requirement of a certain, you know, a pretty substantial amount.
20, 30K, right?
30K, something like that.
Obviously, if you have like more money, I guess if you have more money, you have more options.
Yep.
But it gets to a point, maybe too much money, you have less options. So if you have like 100 million, then maybe it's less options. But
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, when you start talking about sort of like the bigger visas, and when you're talking about the EB5, so
EB5,
there's a lot more scrutiny, right? They usually even ask for like seven years worth of tax records,
like foreign tax returns, right?
Foreign tax returns. Sometimes
the banks will ask for this.
No, this is the USCIS.
Oh, there's the immigration process. Yeah. Okay.
And you know, as you know, there's actually a lot of countries out there that don't even have sort of like the taxation system, right? Or it's a reliable one where you can.
Or they'll tax you on like gross receipts and not on your income. So they'll tax you on like a higher VAT or higher property tax.
So that could you know, be a little bit problematic sometimes. But so yeah, like you said, the more money doesn't particularly mean it's going to be easier when it comes to the source of funds. it might be pretty much a headache. But that's why, we work and partner up with, very professional CPAs like yourself, right? To,
To
vet
verify the
all of
funds.
this and verify the funds and where they're coming from. And, typically it works out pretty well.
So when clients like my example was an Israeli guy, so they can come to the US. They have the ETSA, right?
Yeah.
So when they come, where do you send them to open bank accounts? Do they come to Miami? Can they open accounts? Like, tell me about that
Yeah.
experience.
So, yeah, like you said, some countries, are allowed to do the ESTA, which is essentially like a 3 month. It's not a visa.
You can just come in
You
without
just
the
come
visa.
in. It's
Yeah,
very easily to come in, or the B1, B2. A lot of people don't even know, but like the B1, B2, they just assume it's a tourist visa. But the first part of the B1 is actually a business visa. So essentially, what you can do is just you can go visit clients. You can talk to providers. Close contracts. As long as you're not working here and getting paid,
yeah,
like unauthorized work, then you're completely fine to do business here, right?
cool.
And one of those business is exactly that: going to open a bank account for, you know,
But if you're on a B1, B2 and you're coming in and and you ask the customs guys, like you generally don't want to tell them, "Oh, I'm here for business. I'm
That
here to."
that's really that's really interesting you bring that up. I mean, you talk about this all the time. So, they might boast about it, and they're pretty much shooting themselves on the foot, right? Because let's
Oh
be
yeah.
honest, I mean, these agents, they're not 100% knowledgeable of, sort of, corporate structuring and, US tax law and all that, but they
Well,
just hear
they're definitely not
buzzwords.
knowledge about U.S. tax or corporate tax law or like, yeah, international tax law.
I mean, they're not. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
CBP officers are different than, USCIS officers, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
So
I
so
mean, that's not their job.
CBP officers are like just the ones that are, that you see at the airport, right?
Yeah, sure.
So a USCIS officer that has been trained on doing, say, E2 visas, investment visas, or EB5 visas, even more complex investment visas, of course, are trained on US tax law and all that. But when you're talking about just the
Like
guys,
border
that are
patrol.
border
Yeah.
patrol, they're not really well versed onto this issue. So, you might boast and say, well, I have, I'm coming in, I have, you know, 3 businesses here, and then they'll say, "What?" And they just heard business, and all of a sudden, they might take that as you
So even if you have a
working here.
B1, B2, you shouldn't even talk about business stuff.
Well, I mean, I advise typically that unless you're directly asked about something, you should never give more information to any authority,
Yeah.
just in general as an attorney, right? So if they're not asking you specifically whether or not you have a business, you have an LLC or anything like that, why would you start talking about that, right? If they ask you specifically, "Hey, do you have, an
I would
LLC?"
say don't bring it up.
Don't bring it up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
Because it's I've had clients actually get in trouble
Yep.
and get their B1s, B2 denied because they talk about having an LLC and then like it's just really confusing for the agents that you can have a
It's
US
confusing.
company.
It could be taken as you working without an authorization, and that's certainly illegal. You can't do that. And then, unfortunately, they literally hold the key to the entrance of the country, so they can revoke your visa and then send you right back to where you came from.
Speaking of volunteering information,
Yeah.
what do you think about the BOI report? Do you have much knowledge or insight about this
Well,
beneficial ownership information
there
reporting?
was just an injunction passed that I believe is a federal judge in Texas,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
that basically said that, we're going to put a stop to it right now. God knows where it's going to go.
But like, would you?
Um,
What do you think about like filing or not filing? Do you file for your companies?
No, absolutely, 100%. Are you kidding me? I mean,
You just did it
you're the one
anyways,
who
right?
just told me about it, and it got me scared. And I told every single one of my clients about it as well. It's like, what is that, a penalty of potentially $500 a day or something like that?
Yeah, there's some penalties. I have a lot of clients and like people on YouTube who are like, "Oh, don't ever give them more information than they need." And
Yeah,
like the thing is that I was talking about is that there's an injunction stopping it,
yeah,
but now it's being appealed, obviously, by the
yeah,
U.S. government. And some attorneys say it's going to be appealed, and the appeal that's going to limit the scope of it to people within that jurisdiction or that legal jurisdiction.
yeah.
And the appeals was that take 2 months for the appeal to go through,
No,
maybe
the
longer.
process could be longer, man. It could be a very long process. I mean, the judicial system is set up kind of, on purpose in that
We can
way.
appeal stuff forever. You just
Forever. And I mean, like, yeah, if it has to get all the way to the top, even if it gets accepted, because the Supreme Court doesn't have to take cases, right? So, God knows where it can
well,
take
they got
us.
to go through this. It's in like a local circuit judge court in Texas,
Yeah, exactly.
and I guess it's a federal judge, so he
Yeah,
injuncted the whole thing. And now the attorney general is doing the appeal, right? It's like
right.
the big one,
Exactly.
and a lot of Americans don't like it. I filed for most of my companies. I'll probably still file for the rest before year end because
Yeah.
I feel like even if they win, or I think they're probably going to limit the appeal. Even though I guess I'm in Texas, I don't think like I don't want the people who have already filed to be paranoid about it
Yeah.
because it's really just going to FinCEN to fight financial crimes
Yeah.
and terrorism. And I understand that like don't give the information more information than required to the government, but I also like think you should focus more on making money. And I felt kind of bad with some of the last comments. They're like, this guy just wants to. He's a corporate. He's a government shill or whatever. He's just,
Well, I mean, look, I look at it this way. I mean, we meet when you brought this up to my attention originally, a couple of months at the beginning of the year or whatever. I'm more of a, hey, you don't want to be on the wrong side of the government, right?
yeah,
On a target list of the
yeah,
government.
for sure.
So I rather just be compliant, and that's the advice that I would typically give to clients. And then there you go. The process went through, and now there's an injunction, and perhaps you don't have to do it anymore. And yeah, maybe all the information is going to be sort of tossed out, and it won't be reviewable, right?
Well,
So
it's already limited into like how FinCEN's not allowed to share the information unless like formally requested by
like a
like a
FOIA request.
cooperative government. Yes,
Okay.
it's like really guarded in who they share
Yeah.
the information with. And that's why I was telling clients in the beginning, like it's just to get it over with and file. We've been filing for our clients all year because it was required all year.
Yeah.
And now there's still people who haven't filed. I'm sharing information. I'm trying not to give legal advice on yes, file this. I'm an
Right.
attorney. I'm not an attorney, but I want to get your opinion on it. So
No, yeah. Look, like I said, once again, you don't want, to be on the wrong side of the federal government more than any other entity out here and in this country, right? So you do what they say you're supposed to do, and then let the process play out and see where it takes us, right?
yeah.
No.
So you're working a lot with people coming in on the E2 visa. So people that want to move to the United States. I work with people who don't want to come to the US, but want to use US companies. I think there's a lot of overlap with the the how they're operating financially. They're basically all still using the same LLCs and the
Yep.
same bank accounts.
Yep.
What other like are you working with a lot of clients who actually stay outside the US or like who let's say are you working with a lot of clients who get the E2 but actually don't live in the US and they kind of spend most of their time abroad still?
So you do see a lot of people who perhaps are utilizing I mean, it's not like they're defrauding, the system or anything like that. They're utilizing the visa to, sort of employ Americans, stimulate the economy, which is
Well, like to
the
come in
purpose
and
of
out, but
that.
not to stay here,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But they're coming in and they're, and out. And sometimes it's a family reason. Sometimes they have their kids in college and they want to be near the kids, right? So like if you're in a B1, B2, they don't want to encounter a situation where essentially, like a CBP officer is just giving them, a heckling time to come in.
And that
So
happens, right?
yeah, that definitely happens. I
If
mean,
you're in like 10 times a year,
yeah,
like B1,
exactly. And you're
B2,
like, what are you doing here? Like, are you working here? Like, what are you doing? So that could happen. So they could get even their visa revoked. Imagine that. Now all of a sudden
and then you have nothing,
you
right?
can't see your kid for like, the entire time that he or her is at school, right? So sometimes
Or even you have part-time business initiative, like in interests in the US and you need to come check on your business interests.
exactly
That's what the E2 is for.
me
So
too.
so can sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah,
can the agents take an E2 visa?
Well, they can
'Cause
certainly
they can
they can raise flags. So the CBP officers, they have there are the key holders, right?
but they
So
can take a B1, B2, they can chop it up
yeah,
on
they
the
can
day.
chop it off right
But
there.
like an E2 is not the same?
Well, they can, yeah, they can certainly cancel it as well, right? So, I mean, they have a lot of sway. The only thing that they can't do, and a lot of people get this mistaken, that they'll take sometimes your physical green card, but that doesn't mean that they're taking away your residency, right? Only a
Mm.
a federal immigration judge can take your residency away. They'll put you in removal proceedings, and then you have to, prove that you are an actual resident, that you weren't outside of the states for that long period of time. You still have ties
So
to
that's
the
for the
community.
That's for the green card holders who've
The
been
green card
spending 6
holders.
years in Portugal, and they're like, "Hey, I'm still a green card holder," and they come
Yeah,
back,
they
yeah.
come in and they're like, "Well, hold up just a second," and they actually
You're not
don't.
a resident here,
Yeah,
yeah.
they don't. They take the physical card, but they put them through the process and all that. Um, but yeah, so there's situations where people just want to be here for also like this is the point that I was trying to make. So I know that we talk a lot about E2s, but there's also the E1. So a lot of people don't know about the E1. So the E1 is more about trade, right? So essentially, what the E1 states is that if you can prove that more than 50% of your international trade, right? Let's say you're a Canadian company and you do, I don't know, $1 million a year, right? But $900,000 of that is within Canada. But then $100,000 of that is done strictly only in the United States. So that means that more than 50% of your international trade, right? is done with the United States, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So then that means that you can get an E1 visa essentially.
Does
So
this E1 lead to permanent residency?
you can also, so they're all stepping stones, right? So you can always apply for other, visas, either even EB5, or perhaps use one of the ones that we've talked a lot about, EB1s, or even EB2 and IW, depending on how successful you've been, right? And try to get a green card that way. But with the E1, essentially, it's not substantial investment. It's not the core um, sort of focus of it, right? It's
Yeah.
more about the trade, and
Okay.
that could be also services. So
Okay.
it could be, hey, imagine you were Canadian and you said, hey, most of my clients are American, so they could give you a
Or
one, and you come in here and you say, hey, I just
or in reverse, I have a bunch of Canadian clients. I work with a lot of Canadians. So if I was applying to Canada, I would say, look, I have a Canadian client. I do. Yeah, I kind of
yeah,
get it.
exactly. So that's another side of the E sort of visas
So
people don't know about.
I want to transition a little bit to a big thing I get from my clients is they want US accounts. So there's a lot of people from restricted countries. I say restricted from the traditional US bank financial institution
Yeah,
method. Like, so, my friends in Iran or Syria or,
yeah,
countries where you can't open an online bank account,
yeah,
Pakistan, Cuba,
right.
whatever. So obviously they have to get, maybe that's a tough example. They have to get a visa to come to the US. The question is there any like tricks or shortcuts to get a tourist visa as a foreign person? Because a lot of these people need to come here just to open bank accounts.
Yeah. There really isn't, and there's certainly
Where do they apply?
tougher, huh?
Where do they apply?
They go to a consulate. You have to go to a consulate. The major thing that you have to prove is that you have ties to your country. The one job of the officer, right, the consular officer that's reviewing your case and doing the interview for you, is to make sure that you have enough ties in the country so you can demonstrate that your intention is not to stay in the United States, right?
Yeah,
So
sure.
how do you do that? I got kids in here. My kids are still in school.
Yeah, I got kids, job,
I have
car,
my parents in
house.
here. I have cars. I have companies. I have properties. I have businesses. So a lot of different things are tying you to your country. So you're not in a position, to just leave your country and stay in the United States and leave your family behind and your businesses. So that's usually,
Yeah,
where you have a pretty strong case to get a tourist
but it
visa
still takes
in your case.
forever though, right?
Depending on the countries, yeah, there's some countries where where
What's
the
like what's like Colombia or like
Colombia, it's 18 months.
Mexico? What's Mexico?
Mexico, depending, it could be I've seen, anywhere from 3 to 9 months.
3 to 9 months. This is fun. This is
But
a
Colombia is it's outrageous.
tourist visa roulette. So what about Brazil?
Brazil, I don't know, man. That's actually
What
a
about
little bit 6 months, something like that. It
what
really,
about what do
the thing is,
Ukrainians
it
do?
goes back, it
Oh,
goes
sorry.
up and down, right?
Yeah.
So like it has a lot to do with the capacity the officers and the consulate has at that particular moment. Just like
Sure.
we spoken before,
What's the local consulate, right?
a local consulate, right? So sometimes they get, a heavier load of other visas, so they have to switch officers from that one department that deals with one visa to the other one because they have more of those type of
So it's
visas
just
coming
constantly
in.
changing,
It's constantly
but it's
changing.
always
Yeah,
long in Colombia.
yeah.
So what about like Ukraine, Venezuela, and these countries that currently can petition for asylum? Can they get a, it's no longer to get a visa, but they come to get a tourist visa,
So
come here and claim
for
asylum?
example, like, Venezuela, I mean, and Cuba, there's been, and it's like ping pong. They open up the embassy, they close it, they open it, they close it. But essentially what they do is that they'll send them to another country. And there's other countries, like, island countries that'll take in,
What do you mean they'll send them to another country? Who will?
meaning that, for example, like if the relationship between the United States and that particular country, like Venezuela or say Cuba, right, are in a sour spot, right, depending on who's in the government at the time, right, the embassy simply just won't process them,
Oh,
right, they
okay.
won't process them at all. But that just because they won't process them there doesn't mean that they won't process in a different country. So they might go to, I don't know, the Dominican Republic, or they might go to some other different
It's
island
tricky,
country
huh?
around. So
Yeah.
you can go over there and essentially try to get your B1 over there, your B2 over there.
So if I'm a non-US person, which is what we're talking about, and I want to get this tourist visa, do you hire local attorneys in those countries? You don't hire US attorneys, right?
Oh no, I mean,
Like I say, you have
you can
Canadian
do,
and you want to hire an attorney to help you do
yeah.
it faster. Like, what's that
I
work?
mean, you'll probably be smart enough to realize that an immigration attorney or an attorney here in the States is probably the more knowledgeable one. But I certainly
But you would,
know of services
yeah.
in other countries where they try to expedite, or at least they know how it works, and they'll sort of coach you or tell you all the things that I just told you right now, sort of gather as much documentation to, make sure that you convince the officer that you have enough ties to your community, to your country, that you're not gonna just stay in the United States.
I mean, we take it for granted out here because I use LLCs and bank accounts, but see, we have entrepreneurs in countries that have no way to open an online account in the US, no way to open a physical account, can't really travel here. It's tough to open accounts in other countries. And like without banking and without ways to transact and do business online, it's very difficult to grow and scale a any business at all.
Yeah.
So, these are tough questions and tough things that people have to deal with. And I've talked to people who've like I talked to a guy, a Nigerian guy actually earlier today, and he actually has the visa and comes to the US, but like he got his accounts closed. He didn't know he could come here and open an account in person if he, knows the right people and stuff. But, so many, I talked to a lot of guys, especially in Nigeria, it sucks because, Kenya is cool, like country to the left is cool. Like
Yeah.
they can open accounts online, but, whatever, they can't. So you have to they can be stuck and it's really tough to do business. And
Yeah.
maybe you have to use Payoneer or something else. So I'm just sympathetic for that.
No, 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 I agree. It's a pretty unfortunate situation for those people, but you're right. I mean, you need the banking system, and that's sort of like they're private entities, right? So they sort of, yeah, assign their own policy within their own
Well,
institutions,
it's
and
a
they do
risk
whatever it
assessment,
is,
right?
right?
It's a risk
So they
assessment.
they do what they think it's best for their own business. So that's unfortunate that you can't control it. But I mean, in theory, the country and sort of the government can sort of be biased against, I guess, one country or the other. But they do make it harder in certain situations for countries like North Korea, I guess, or
Yeah, and
Cuba.
I'm real empathetic. I know I'm smiling. I've been doing videos all day, so I'm pretty exhausted. So I know I've been smiling and stuff. I really am empathetic. I love you guys. That's why I make this content. I'm trying to help you out, whether you want to come to the US and open an account or open a company online and work with me. And we have US businesses, we have contacts. We help our clients who are all over the world open the right kind of company in the US, the tools they need, the bank accounts, and do all the taxes and everything correctly and efficiently. You can schedule a free call with the team and a paid call with me if you want at jamesbakercpa.com/schedule. You see that's the thing in the back. That's how you spell James Baker. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's links and descriptions and stuff. Subscribe and check out some of the other videos. We talk about opening bank accounts, opening companies, international tax concepts all the time. Joaquin, thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate
For
it.
immigration questions, if you want to immigrate to the US, Joaquin Rosales, we can introduce you to him too. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe. See you later.
Thank you.